Absolutely. I think that there's no reason to think that he can't be the fourth cornerback off the board. Frankly, I don't think there's a reason to think that he might not go ahead of Jimmy Smith because Jimmy Smith has those off the field questions. So depending on how some teams view him, if they're really looking for a cornerback, he could be the third cornerback taken. It really wouldn't shock me. I like Dowling. I like him a lot. I like his ball skills. I think that he's a very good player, and he's going to be a very good pro. But even after Dowling, I wouldn't reach if Dowling wasn't, by far and away the best player on the board, on my board at the time when I was picking, and I needed a cornerback, I'd wait because there's a couple other guys. Devon House from New Mexico State intrigues me. Curtis Brown from Texas. Aaron Williams from Texas. Now, Aaron Williams and Curtis Brown, if you put them together, you've got basically pretty much like a Prince Amukamara. That you've got a top 10 cornerback.
Yep.
Williams is a little bit on the slow side and might have to move to safety eventually. Someone like Antro Roll comes to mind in that fashion. Curtis Brown's a little bit more athletic than Aaron Williams, but doesn't have the same attributes that you look for. There's a bunch of guys in between rounds 2 and 3, and there's a bunch of small school guys. Curtis Marsh is a very underrated cornerback. He's got the size-speed combo, very productive at Utah State playing in the WAC, had some very big games against Boise State. It was one of those guys that they looked against, looked to throw to the other side of the field against. There's a bunch of guys in round 2 and 3. Now, if you got one pick at the end of round 2, which cornerback are you hoping is still there, realistically?
Well, that goes back to what I was saying before. Realistically, I could see any of those guys being there because these teams are all going to have different rankings on these guys. But, are you saying, Brandon Harris? Are you saying that's too late for him, the end of the second round? Because I could see him falling to the end of the second round. I don't think it's that unheard of.
I agree. I don't think that it's that unheard of because, Harris, we heard Harris' name brought about a lot, but, he's on the shorter side. He's got the speed, but, I've heard of a lot of people not as impressed with Brandon Harris and Brandon Harris and Aaron Williams, who most people have as, some combination in their top 5, as even a guy like, Curtis Brown and Chimdi Chekwa and Devon House. So I don't know what to expect. I have no idea what order they're going to go in. But I can tell you what, if someone, and I could see them going in any fashion, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of those cornerbacks, like you alluded to already, definitely is available in round 3 for a variety of teams.
Right, and you know what? The talent doesn't really even drop off in round 3. You mentioned Curtis Marsh, who, by the way, is going to be on our podcast Tuesday night, 6:30 Eastern, so tune in for that. And, he's definitely a talented third-round pick. You've got Buster Screen. You've got Anthony Gator. You talked about Curtis Brown and Aaron Williams from Texas. Shockey Brown, is a 4th, 5th-round pick from Texas. You have Cortez Allen from the Citadel. Brandon Burton's name is kind of, his stock has kind of fallen off a little bit. He didn't run that fast at the combine, and, he's more of a developmental guy that I think scouts thought was a little bit faster than he timed. But another guy, Corey Lindsey. Corey Lindsey's had, I think, 9-10 visits in the last couple of weeks because small school guy, very productive, but he's been injured. He hasn't been able to work out. A bunch of teams are bringing him in, though, now. They're bringing him in for workouts to see what they have there. He could be a third-round pick. He'd be a good fit for a team that plays a lot of zone, a team like the Bucks or the Colts. There's a lot of depth at cornerback in this draft. There's no doubt. And then the wild card here is DeMarcus Van Dyke, which we've been hearing second-round pick after he ran, depending on what time you go by, you could say mid-4 threes in the 40-yard dash at the combine. but very raw. And we've been hearing second-round pick. I wouldn't draft him in the second round, but we've been hearing that's a possibility. What do you think of that?
We've even seen him in, his at the times in mid-4.2s, and he might even be faster than what he ran at the combine. And I don't like DeMarcus Van Dyke. A guy can run as fast as he wants in the whole world. Playing cornerback is a lot more than that. And at the beginning of the season, DeMarcus Van Dyke got benched. I think part of it was, at the time Randy Shannon was kind of trying to shake things up. He gave quarterback Ryan Hill, who's also in this draft but will not be drafted, a start over Van Dyke. A couple starts here and there. I just think that if you're a second-round cornerback, you're not getting benched in the first month of the season. And it wasn't for anything other than just not being a playmaker. I'm not a big DeMarcus Van Dyke fan.
It's interesting. The last couple of guys you brought up played in the East-West Shrine game, and DeMarcus Van Dyke stood out at times because of his size and speed and playing against lesser competition in that game, but certainly didn't do anything to wow me, because it's definitely something where a guy like that should excel in a game like that. And it's something that you expect to always hear around this time is, when you've got a guy like that he's going to stand out because he's the fastest guy probably in the draft. The other guy you just talked about, Corey Lindsey, he was another guy that, I think he had a pretty poor offseason. He got invited to the East-West Shrine game. I didn't think that he played overly that well. He didn't impress me by any stretch of the imagination. He didn't get an invite to the combine, so someone in that fashion, of all the guys, the 300-plus guys that got invited, he got overlooked. He might be the best guy. He's not invited, either him or Tim Barnes, the center from Missouri. I don't know. I think it wouldn't. There's so many cornerbacks in this draft that you can, Corey Lindsey might be a guy that ends up going in the third round. He wouldn't be on my draft board. DeMarcus Van Dyke, I would put very, very low on my draft board, because I think that, speed is obviously something you can't teach, but if he's going as high as we've heard, whether it's second, third, or fourth round, I don't like him there, and I don't draft him there.
Well, I agree with that. You don't take him in the second or third round. But, just to play devil's advocate for a second, we would have said, actually we did say the same things about Sam Shields last year at this time. Same thing. Fast guy, raw player from Miami. Somebody's going to look at DeMarcus Van Dyke and say, I can coach that guy. We could make him into a special player. It'll probably be the Raiders, but we'll see how that goes out.
I think part of the difference, I was going to say, with Shields, he was very raw as a cornerback because he played wide receiver at Miami. So I think that people were projecting him out, as being a potential cornerback. So that's all I want to say about Shields.
No, I hear you. I agree with you. I wouldn't take him in the second or third round. We don't have a lot of time left. We have maybe about 4 minutes left to talk about this. But, we talked a little bit about the Panthers last night and how we wouldn't take quarterback if we were picking first overall. I'm still not convinced that they are taking Cam Newton. We both are in agreement that we take, Darius or Peterson, one of those two guys. So I figured tonight maybe we could just talk a little bit about the Broncos and what their strategy would be. And, Ray, you want to get us started on that?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what the Broncos are going to do, because John Elway's been talking so much about Tim Tebow's basically not his guy, and for lack of a better term, I don't think John Elway thinks very highly of Tim Tebow. But I think that they need to shore up their defense, particularly the defensive line. They really never addressed it when they had the 3-4, and now that they're kind of starting to they had a little bit more of the personnel towards the 3-4, they decided to go back to the 4-3 with, John Fox coming in. And again, teams just ran on them the last couple of years, and they really don't have anyone who's going to be a clog in the middle there. And I think that if Marcel Darius doesn't go number one, he's got to go number two. At least that's what I think. That's what I think they should do. That's what I think the logical thing would be.
with the way these words flying around, Blaine Gabbert might be the guy that John Elway's looking for. I think John Elway might see a little of himself in Blaine Gabbert. I think that's a huge wild card for everybody in this. I don't think that they're going there, but they might.
Well, I don't think they're taking a quarterback either. I don't think they should take a quarterback. And my top-ranked defensive tackle in this draft is Nick Fairley. With that said, at number 2, if I'm the Broncos, I'm taking Marcel Darius. He's the better run stopper. The Broncos need to stop the run. They don't have anything in the middle, like you said, and that's a slam dunk pick. The only spot where that gets a little bit dicey is if the Panthers take Marcel Darius 1. In that case, I could see Fairley going second. I really could. I think, Patrick Peterson could be in play there. But if I'm the Broncos and Darius is off the board, I'm taking Nick Fairley. I think he's been tremendously underrated throughout this offseason. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I know we're running short on time here too, but you can't deny what Nick Fairley did. If I put his stats up and I told you this was a defensive end stats, you with the sacks and the tackles for loss, you'd say that was a great season for a defensive end. If I told you he was a defensive tackle, you'd say he must be from a mid-major conference or a Division II school. If I told you he played in the SEC, you'd say, how is this guy not the number 1 overall pick guaranteed? Nick Fairley's got some concerns, but for the same concerns you could say for Marcel Darius, we didn't see anywhere near the same production in the same conference. And granted, it was a different scheme and different teams and systems, but the production is off the charts. And we talk about this being, this garbage about it being a one-year wonder. Most of these guys are one-year wonders. Most of them, not all of them, most of them only contribute a little bit in their sophomore seasons and make a big jump in their junior seasons, contribute a lot, and go into the draft off of that. So we could say that for about, 20 of the top 30 prospects.
Well, that's especially the case when you're a JUCO transfer and you leave early for the draft as a junior.
Absolutely.
And a lot of these concerns that everybody's talking about that are popping up now, they were all there before the season ended. Everybody should have known about it. Oh, he plays with a mean streak. He's a one-year wonder. We knew about all this during the season, and when the season ended, he certainly seemed like the number 1 consensus defensive tackle to me, and for some reason, that's changed for most people, and I'm not really sure why. But that's really all the time we have for tonight. Oh, you want to get in the last word, Ray?
I just wanted to say I'm with you on that 100%. I don't understand, and I think that Fairley's going to be a very good NFL player and a Pro Bowler.
Right. So even though I think it'd be an upset for him to go second overall, I think if Darius goes first to the Panthers, I think there's a chance he could be the pick. But we'll be back with a few more before the draft, and then we're gonna keep this going even after the draft. We'll be back with our reviews and grades, at some point the week after next. So,
yep.
Stay tuned, and thanks for listening to the second edition of the NFL Rough Draft podcast. We'll see you next time.
Feel free to email questions, and we'll answer them for you on the podcast immediately following.